Oh, why is it so hot in here? In this video, I'm going to take you through the top reasons why you're getting so overheated inside your classic car. In fact, in almost any car. Whether you have AC, plan to add AC, or are just plain tired of sweating your butt off, this video will help you cool down so your classic will be way more comfortable to drive and ride in. Follow along and see how many of these you are experiencing. At the end, I'll reveal the easiest fix to the most common reason classic cars are so hot inside. Hey, if you like this content, I have a great newsletter that I'm really psyched about. It covers all things classic cars. So sign up and you'll get insider classic car info from me on a weekly basis. When you have a classic car, it's important to understand all the various causes for hot inside temps and inefficient HVAC systems. Yep, I said HVAC because I'm going to cover a lot of things that apply to your heater and your AC as well, so therefore HVAC. It's critical to understand how all the various parts work with one another because just missing one thing can totally derail the outcome you're after and even the point of upgrading to begin with. This is what I focus on most when I'm creating a custom build plan for a customer. What is the best recipe of quality parts so my customer gets the result they're after and then some? So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the AC condenser. It's very important that you make sure your AC condenser is of proper size and really properly located. What I mean by that is we want to have it as close as we can to the radiator, moreover as close as we can to any kind of a fan that's going to pull air through it. The AC condenser dissipates heat and the AC system is only going to work as well as this guy can let heat out. So if it's far away from your radiator and fans, the air is going to go around it instead of through it. So make sure it's close. If it's not close enough, maybe you can shroud it, put some foam on there. You might even consider doing like an electric pusher fan on the front if you have room, or in the case like this car, maybe make sure you have good fans on the back side or a good shroud. It's so important that you be able to pull air through the condenser and also that the condenser is large enough to cover the whole opening because much like a radiator, you want as much surface area as you can here. So keep in mind AC condenser location and placement. Number two also has to do with AC condensers. On a classic car like this one, it doesn't get driven that much. The system's relatively new. So you can look at the AC condenser right here and you can see that it's pretty clean. If you imagine like your daily driver, or if you've got a truck or a car and you live out on a dirt road, or you just put a lot of miles on your car, what happens is hair, dirt, all kinds of different things, feathers, whatever, bugs get all wedged up in the AC condenser and they actually clog it so that air's not going through it. So anytime you can, if you're giving your car a wash seasonally or at some kind of an interval, make sure that you blow either air or water through the condenser and make sure that all the fins are clear. Again, it's so important air goes through this thing. It's a little tip, but it's a big tip. Another thing that's super important when you have AC or just a heater in your car is really getting that air to actually blow on you. So this GTO's got an aftermarket air conditioning in it, and you can see that it's kind of a cheaper kit in my opinion where it just puts the vents underneath the dash. The problem with that is all that air just comes down in your lap. So what he's going to have us do is we're going to take vents and we're going to put them in the dash in the proper locations so that that air can actually blow at us, because you want to be able to feel that air, whether it be cold air or hot air. Sure as heck, if it's AC, I want that AC in my face. If it's heat, maybe it's fine if it's on the floor, but make sure if you can, you put your vents up high. Anytime I do an AC conversion, I like to try to use original looking vents, get it up high so we can get good flow. So number four has exactly to do with that good flow. Most aftermarket air conditionings are going to have flexible ducting, and it's going to go across the dash, you know, from the box over here to this vent or to the other vent or whatever. You want to try to have it like this where it's as unobstructed as possible, no sharp kinks or bends. If you actually bend this and kink it, you could imagine that's drastically going to reduce airflow. So be real careful in routing your lines. Make sure that the vents have the best flow possible. What's nice also is like on a stock system is they actually have smooth tubing usually instead of corrugated tubing. But what you'll find is where all the connections go together, all of the foam seals or rubber seals or ducting is all kind of falling apart or not connected well. So kind of like maybe you've done in your house, go through there and make sure that all of the seals are tight. If you have to duct tape with some quality type of duct tape. Put your vents together to get rid of any air leaks. We want that air to come all the way through and out the vents effectively. And if we can, we want to try to get the air coming out evenly so that each vent is getting adequate airflow. A lot of times you'll see a kink on one side, so the passenger is really cool, but the driver's not. So keep that in mind, especially on old systems. Make sure that all the ducting is working well. If you're doing an aftermarket system, beware the kinks. So what's really important also is keeping the hot air out or the cold air out in order to keep your cabin temperatures where you want them. So it's so important to make sure that you have good weather stripping that seals well against the window. On this car, like the T-tops just got new seals. We've got new seals here around the window. You want to make sure that when you're in the car, you're not letting all of your cold air out and you're not letting all that hot air in. So don't take for granted how important simple things like weather stripping are. Weather stripping, door and window glass adjustment is really going to make a huge difference in the internal temps inside the car. Another cool trick that works is on this Trans Am. You could barely tell it's actually got a clear tint on it. Tinting your windows really helps to keep the UV out and some of that heat out. The main thing is getting that UV out of the car. It's really going to help reduce temps. On this car, like I said, you can barely see it, but he actually did a pretty high dollar ceramic tint. So ceramic tint is going to be the absolute best in heat prevention and UV protection. So keep in mind, maybe add some tint. I'm going to open the hood on this GTO and show you yet another trick that people seem to always miss. The goal is to keep all of the hot air from getting inside the passenger compartment. This is true if you don't have air conditioning. This is true if it's a cold day and you want your heater to work, and it's especially true if you've got air conditioning. You want to keep all of this hot heat and wind from going inside the car. This is a perfect example of a car that's got all these random holes in the firewall. If I put a light behind it, you'd actually see it shining through, but you got hole, 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 hole. It's not even sealed well around the steering column. The old heater box isn't sealed well. There's another hole here. Somebody went real far and put a plastic plug in that one. But this car has air conditioning, and I guarantee you, if you're driving down the road, you got a ton of hot air coming inside the passenger compartment. That completely defeats the purpose. I guarantee you that's gonna decrease your efficiency by a good 20%. So make sure that you're focusing on all these things. Keep the hot air out and the cold air in. So it's convenient that I've got another Pontiac here. This one's a Le Mans, not a GTO, but it's a great example of a car where they actually filled all the holes in the firewall and then added a lot of Dynamat. So I love putting Dynamat on firewalls because it'll block a lot of those holes and keep the hot air from coming in. It's also a great heat insulator. It also is a great sound barrier as well. So I always try to put Dynamat or some kind of equivalent in the cars. In this car, we're running a ballistic mat. Dynamat's really the top name in the game. Also, this is a convertible, so you wouldn't do it, but they make what's called a Dynaliner pad that's about yay thick, and it's a foam sticky pad, so that can go under the headliner before you install it to keep a lot of that heat out and the cold in. But when we're talking Dynamat, I like to put Dynamat almost everywhere in the car. It's so key to put it behind where the carpet ends and underneath the back seat, because you got to keep in mind that the mufflers are right here. Mufflers make a ton of noise, right? And they create a ton of heat. So at minimum, at least Dynamat underneath the back seat. If you can, Dynamat the tunnel, and really doing the floors is going to help a lot too, because you've got hot exhaust pipes. Again, like I said, I love Dynamat and Dynamat type products. Any equivalent is fine. You can get them from a number of different manufacturers, but they're just going to make the car feel so much cooler, so much tighter, and way more solid. Firewall, floors, do it back here. That's really going to help with heat. You can put it behind your door panels and anywhere else. It's all up to you how much you want to use, but it makes a difference. This charger is a good example of a factory AC system. What's nice about a lot of the factory AC systems is the dealer kind of knew what they were doing, right? They built these cars right, the manufacturer did a lot of homework, and as a result, most of the installs were done very clean. So for example, on this, you're gonna see a nice big condenser that fits the opening nicely like we talked about earlier. But what I really wanna show you on this car is the routing of the hoses. When we do aftermarket AC, a lot of times we're trying to hide things and make them really cute. The problem with a lot of the AC systems you're going to see is you can't get the hoses far enough away from the exhaust or away from sources of heat. So in situations where you're going to have a hose near a header or near the engine, you can always take some kind of insulation. Vintage Air and another few companies make this kind of tar paper, if you will, and it goes on and you can squeeze it, you know, on a line like so. Generally speaking, we're not worried about the small line. That's going to be your high pressure line, but what we want to do is do it on the larger line. That's your low pressure line. That's your suction line. That's actually going to get cold to the touch when you're running the AC. So because it's cold, you're trying to insulate it so you're not letting a lot of that cold evaporate, because we want to get as much of that Freon to work effectively. So keep in mind, anytime things are routed close, go ahead and put some insulation, and again, keep things away from heat sources. That's going to really help your AC temperatures improve by at least a few degrees. So we're starting to get a few degrees here, a few degrees there, a few more degrees here, and a few there. That's a big difference, right? It's a cumulative approach to this. Okay, so next up we're going to talk about the evaporator. This happens to be a Vintage Air unit. You can actually see what we were talking about. It's got this tape on here to insulate the hoses to keep the cold in and the heat out. So they definitely use it from the factory on these new units. But anyways, does size matter in terms of the evaporator? The answer really is yes, because if you had a new car, if you've ever seen behind the dash of a new car, it's like all evaporator, all heater core, all ducting. It takes up a ton of space. That's why it works so well, right? The problem we have in classic cars is we just don't have a lot of room back there. So we've got to go with something moderately small. I love this new kit from Vintage Air. This is what they call the Gen 5 unit. It flows 20% more air than its predecessor, which is huge in terms of volume of airflow. It's also a heck of a lot more efficient. So the evaporator on a traditional classic car is probably going to have some kind of a cable that opens some blend doors and allows air to go from different spot to different spot. We're talking like, you know, up to defrost, down to dash, all the way down to floor, or any kind of a mid blend. The problem with old cables is that they get worn and kind of pinch and drag and don't really work well. Also, you get worn out seals on the evaporator case, really just letting hot and cold mix together and not getting the air sent to exactly where you want it to. So what's so awesome about these kits from Vintage Air and another of other companies, I personally love Vintage Air, so I can't say enough about the results I've had with their product. They use things like electric servos that control these doors and the hot-cold blend and all the different functions. They also make some really cool controllers that are for most stock applications. So this is like a Chevelle controller, and it looks like it belongs in there. It's got the 3 knobs set up, perfect. You can notice 3 knobs are going to control, you know, hot, cold. They're going to control defrost, floor, and dash vent, and then we're also going to have our fan speed control. So they're pretty awesome. If you don't have a modern controller that's available for your application, or you don't like the look, you can actually run something like this. So this is a Mustang controller with the factory slides, right? But they do something called a slide pot, almost looks like a little, and so you can program it. So you can see that it has its full travel, and so when you program it, you can make sure that it understands the full range of motions. So you can still maintain that factory look, but have extremely accurate control of the evaporator, doors, and everything else related to that. So keep in mind, older systems are going to be exactly that. They're older. The new systems are going to be a heck of a lot more efficient, somewhat affordable, and just a heck of a lot cooler. Voltage. I just was at Hot August Nights in my buddy's truck about a month ago, and we were driving the cruise, and you're stuck in traffic, and I noticed his volts gauge kept dropping and dropping and dropping. Well, the problem was his alternator wasn't working right. You know what that does? When the alternator's not putting out full output at idle, it's going to not let your cooling fans run fast enough. It's not going to let your heater or air conditioning blower fan blow fast enough. And additionally, low voltage at idle is also going to cause more slippage on your AC compressor. So a lot of people don't realize you want to make sure that you've got maximum, probably like about a 14 volts at idle, so that you can make sure that your fans, your HVAC fan, and everything is working at its best. Keep that in mind. Okay, with the evaporator, we said bigger is better, right? But with a compressor, does size matter? A compressor is just a pump, but the essential point to consider is the capacity of the compressor relative to the rest of the AC system. Contrary to popular belief, bigger is not necessarily better when we're talking compressors. And in many cases, too big a compressor can actually result in decreased cooling and component life due to excessive pressure. In most cars, a compressor with about 8 to 9 cubic inch of displacement is enough to cool sufficiently. In almost all cases, in the aftermarket, this will be a sanding unit, usually known as the SD508, which is rated at 8.4 CFM. Another trick is making sure you have the optimal amount of pressure and Freon in your system. So often a guy will have too much Freon in the system and it's going to spike pressures and can actually damage the system. If it's too high, it's not going to work right. If the pressure is too low and you don't have enough Freon in the system, it's also not going to work right. So if you're running low, there's some really cheap kits. You can get this AC refrigerant for about 10 or 20 bucks at your local parts store, and you can simply take the little fitting nozzle kit and you can hook this on to your actually Schrader valve on your system, and you can add Freon. It actually has a gauge. It's going to be pretty rudimentary. It's going to tell you if you've got enough, if you're in the green, if you're yellow, or if you're in the red. This is a good band-aid for a system that's not working properly, or sometimes if you're having issues or you think you lost some Freon, you can simply buy one of these cans and try it out. If it blows colder and it goes back into range and shows that it's actually got the right amount of pressure now, you might be surprised that's all you needed. But again, if you don't know, or if you have some kind of a leak or larger problem, consult a professional. Make sure that your system is full of Freon and working in proper order, and it's going to blow the coldest you could ever imagine. People debate all the time R12 or R134A. Well, R12 is what we used to use, but it's got CFCs in it, chlorofluorocarbons, and it's really bad for the ozone. So in about 95, they switched to R134A. Some people claim it doesn't blow as cold, but it's actually an efficient and more environmentally friendly refrigerant with some minor differences on how it operates. Why should you care? Well, if you're purchasing a new system, it doesn't really matter since R134 is the industry standard now. Some manufacturers offer some R12 stuff and compatible parts, but again, 134 is what's new. So if you've got an old system that operated on R12, you're probably going to need to decide whether you're ready to perform the necessary upgrades to R134A, or you're going to have to track down R12, which is now super hard to find and hideously expensive. So just determine if you want to go through all those upgrades or maybe get something better, because eventually an upgrade is going to be almost unavoidable and expensive. So consider just getting a new kit. It might be the best way to fly. If you missed this earlier in the video, if you like this kind of content, sign up for my newsletter so you can get insider classic car info on a weekly basis. Now, for the last one, the heater control valve. The heater control valve is the main reason that I see way too much heat coming inside a car that's got air conditioning or just simply a heater car. So you got to imagine when the engine's running, you've got hot coolant pumping through the heater hoses, right? Through the radiator hoses, the radiator, the engine, and through the heater hoses, like I say. So how do we resolve that? We're going to have hot water inside the car on a hot day. I don't want that, right? So we can do a heater control valve. So a heater control valve is simply an inline valve that's going to be able to block off the flow going into the heater core. Generally speaking, it's going to be attached to the intake manifold, because the intake manifold is the pressure side, so it's pushing out of the intake manifold into the heater core back to the engine. So we want to try to block the flow of hot water before it gets inside the car. You can get a mechanical heater control valve like this that simply opens and closes. Very simple, can be cable operated. If you're not really mechanically inclined, you can simply install something like this under the hood and then just close it all summer long, and then in the winter open it. A lot of people will run a double valve. What that does is you can put it on both heater lines, so that way you can actually manually close it and make sure that you've got no hot water whatsoever entering that heater core. So we want to try to keep all these different heat sources out of the inside of the car anytime we can. The modern systems like Vintage Air actually have an electronic control valve, so when you click it to AC, this will close and stop the hot water flow, and then open it as necessary when you're running cold or defrost. So great way to simply shut off the hot water flow into your engine bay, into your passenger compartment, and really keep the heat out. So this probably is the #1 trick. Don't let hot water into the car. That's just introducing a ton of heat that you don't need in there. The goal of this video is to exemplify how every little thing makes a difference. The details matter. Each one of these tips will optimize your AC system and totally improve your comfort and driving experience when you're cruising a classic car. And your wives will thank you too.